If you're a fan of Lana Del Rey, you must see the cover story for the December issue of Harper's Bazaar magazine, on which Lana Del Rey is featured. They sent in a big-time writer by the name of Chloe Cooper Jones, who's a two-time Pulitzer Prize finalist. She teaches writing at Columbia University, so the magazine definitely sent in the bigwigs for this big assignment. How much bigger does it get right now than Lana Del Rey, particularly in the aftermath of her 5 Grammy nominations for the 2024 Grammys, as I discussed on a previous video on this channel. And as tends to be the case these days, one topic that she and her subject Lana Del Rey dwell on in this interview is the intense, at times vicious, and at times distasteful criticism that Lana's earliest work, in particular around Born to Die, engendered. And it's a really insightful read, and I think Lana Del Rey fans are going to learn something about Lana Del Rey, but also about ourselves, about the standpoint from which the critics voiced that rage in response to Lana Del Rey's work early on. Jones is really smart in the way that she sort of observes herself as she's observing Lana. She maintains a consciousness of her own perceptions and the influences that perhaps informed those perceptions, just as she remains conscious of Lana herself in a way, I will note, that it provokes some really fine writing from Jones in this story. It's wonderfully detailed. Her descriptions of Lana's, as we'll get into, unadorned and disarmingly simple house for a multimillionaire, as Jones put it, are really, really on point and really well done. And one way in which she maintains a consciousness of herself, just as she sustains an awareness of Lana, who she has been sent there on assignment to observe and profile, is this. She says, the critics early on of Lana's early work said things like she is what Jones describes their criticism as deeming Lana a flashy faker whose career would flicker brightly and burn out. And boy, how wrong those sentiments turned out to be, because here we are more than a decade following Born to Die's release. She's just been nominated for 5 Grammy Awards. As she notes, Born to Die, the success that record has had completely flies in the face of this criticism that it brought on early on. In fact, Jones notes that that 2012 debut LP by Lana Del Rey has spent 500 weeks on the Billboard 200 chart, a feat matched among women solo artists only by Adele. Born to Die became the 5th biggest selling album in the world in 2012. And it's here where I wonder, what is the job of a critic? Isn't part of a critic's job to be perceptive enough to actually put their finger on emerging talent that has promise, that might be around for a while, to discover a talent? And man, it's amazing the extent to which and the frequency with which so many critics got it so wrong. And it's on this point that Lana, as I say in my title of this video, claps back at those critics in a way that is tasteful. She doesn't get mean and diggy and snipey. She's just very plainly laying out this fact that they got it wrong, as she mentions. Now, Jones goes through a few of the critical reviews of Born to Die that really seem to have bothered Lana in particular, because Lana keeps bringing this up in interviews. She's done a decent amount of media lately, including a nice piece for The Hollywood Reporter, from which I'll quote in brief here. But listen to we perhaps 11 years down the road now need to remind ourselves, because Lana, her success now, it's almost, there's a risk of taking for granted that she's the successful artist. There's a risk of forgetting just how condemnatory the criticism was earlier in her career 10 years ago. And so let us not forget that, and Jones doesn't in this piece, and she goes over some of those pieces that Lana herself alludes to here and in other interviews as well. Lindsay Zolads of Pitchfork said that Born to Die was, quote, the album equivalent of a faked orgasm. Oh, that criticism has aged well, hasn't it? Hasn't it, Lindsay? I mean, that is one of the most tired and cliched ways that the English language provides of describing something that one perceives to be inauthentic. And Lindsay, I'm sure you had to really dig deep for that metaphor. Wow, that's well done. But it is no shocking thing that Pitchfork found it within themselves almost 10 years later in 2021 to reappraise Lindsay's review, and grudgingly, it seems, lift their decimal rating of Born to Die from 5.5 to 7.8. At that point, 9 years after the fact, saying this of Born to Die, that it, quote, turned out to be a sign of things to come. You don't say. Like genre-agnostic pop ballads with hip-hop beats and the arch-depressive languor that's more mainstream than ever. Now, I admit, that's some nice writing from Pitchfork, and they were at least gracious enough to admit that they missed it. I wonder where these other critics are now. Where specifically is Lindsay Zoladz with the plate of crow that she really ought to be eating as a result of this? Where is, for that matter, Sasha Farah-Jones in The New Yorker, who said of Lana Del Rey that the character of Del Rey, authentic or not, is so inconsistent that she fades from view into her own photo spread. And it's this kind of criticism that makes it clear that a lot of critics were just anticipating that she was going to be this fly-by-night, a flicker of lightning story, and she would be gone with the darkness in which that flicker of lightning flourished for a fleeting moment, and then that would be it. And again, that turned out to be so, almost at this point, embarrassingly wrong. You know, and one wonders, too, of this stab at Del Rey, of whether or not her character is authentic, because it's inconsistent in his view. I just wonder, you know, isn't inconsistency itself the mark of authenticity, though? Like, which of us isn't a bundle of contradictions from one way to the next as we try to figure ourselves out, as we try to figure out things that happen to us? Which of us is the same exact person from cradle to grave? You know, inconsistency is part of the mark of sort of a soul at war with itself. And most of us are in that state of being from one day to the next, right? Most of us think we've got one position on something in some circumstance or dynamic in our lives, and the next day we're like, maybe, you know, we're questioning ourselves. To question oneself is to make oneself vulnerable to contradiction, because the answers might be manifold and they might contradict one another. And isn't that part of being authentic? So this is where it just seems that critics brought their own preconceived notions to Lana Del Rey's work, their own preconceived definitions of authenticity, their own preconceived definitions of vulnerability, and a number of other themes that emerged in such a direct way in Lana's work early on, and even right on to her most recent record, Did You Know There's an Ocean Under Ocean Boulevard? Did You Know There's a Tunnel Under Ocean Boulevard? The record that's been nominated for 5 Grammy Awards. So, you know, it's just, in retrospect, it's quite fascinating to see the extent to which these critics got it so wrong and how they got it wrong. And one comes to realize, I think, that these critics were revealing more about themselves than they were about Lana Del Rey. And I think that's what Jones's story, which again is so well written and so insightful, and therefore a real treat to Lana Del Rey fans, unearths in a way that is rather persuasive, I have to say. Another critic that Jones's piece reviews in brief is John Caramanica, who also posted a rather dismissive review of Lana Del Rey record, Born to Die, this time in the New York Times. He said, "A career founded on bad faith all around. Can't be long for this world." There we go again. Lana Del Rey's just gonna fly by night and disappear. But at this point, what can Miss Del Rey do? Not much. Her cultural stamp has already been affixed. Her biography written in concrete. Really, in 2012, her biography was written in concrete. Wow, did we get that one wrong? The only real option is to wash off that face paint, muss up that hair, and try again in a few years. There are so many more names out there for the choosing. A stab at her for changing from her given name of Elizabeth Grant, Lizzie Grant, as her first record called her, to Lana Del Rey, her chosen pseudonym. Now, Lana, in this interview, it's not an interview, it's a profile by Jones, of course, that emerged from an interview with Lana. says at one point in the story, quote, "I think in 1 week, the New Yorker, the New York Times, the New York Post, and New York Magazine agreed that I was the most ridiculous act that had ever come out." Later in the story, she alludes to the fact that she was so beaten down by this that she felt almost no longer entitled to have an ego at all. She says of ego, "I don't get to have one anymore. They just got it. It's been smashed to smithereens. I'm sure it's somewhere in my toe. I don't get to have an ego anymore. It's been smashed to smithereens. I'm sure it's somewhere in my toe." This is, you know, you want to talk about vulnerability. These critics who were attacking her for feigned or faked vulnerability failed to consider just how profoundly vulnerable is the act of releasing one's work out into the world on a stage as grand as that on which Lana released her stuff. I mean, this was a big-time release that made a lot of waves, generating reviews in the likes of New York Magazine, the New Yorker, the New York Post, the New York Times. To fail in public, or at least, you know, Lana, of course, didn't fail herself, but she's being cast as a failure. She is being perceived, at least by these critics, to be a failure, and in such a public way, before the world, really. So I wonder, you know, in the contest of vulnerabilities, who was winning that one? Were these critics penning these easy opinions in high-profile publications, dismissing her any more or less vulnerable than Lana Del Rey was of being on the receiving end of so much criticism by making herself vulnerable enough to release this work out into the world, come what may? So she claps back at these critics, and she says, "You know, it's almost like they were wrong, that's all. They just got it so wrong." Indeed they did, because as I mentioned, that Born to Die album was a flying success. She's now been nominated for 11 Grammy Awards altogether over the course of her career, 5 this year alone. And Jones herself, while expressing some cynicism and skepticism of Lana Del Rey in this piece, which we'll get into, says of her latest album, "It may be some of her best work to date. It's a sprawling, textured meditation on time-worn themes like love, family, loss, and longing." There's one fascinating moment in Jones's story that alludes to an interaction Lana Del Rey had with a waitress in Arkansas, and it's this small moment from which grand conclusions can be drawn about the extent to which Lana Del Rey's work is resonating with the masses. Because she says of this moment that she's at a tavern in Arkansas where she was supposed to do a show. And this waitress starts bantering with her and says, "You know, I was in the queue to get tickets for this show, and I lost out." Then she shows Lana her phone, on which Lana can see that this waitress was number 80,000 in the queue to see a Lana Del Rey show in Arkansas. And Lana says of that moment, that sums it all up with a period. That moment when she realized her work had found its way into the crevices of American culture, from Arkansas to LA and all spots in between. That's what that interaction showed her. That was the moment that, as Jones says, she learned that the people in Arkansas were people from whom Del Rey received only acceptance and appreciation. So these critics, it would seem to me, have some splaining to do, don't they? For having got it so wrong. Isn't it part of their job to get it right? Not just bloviate, not just slap their opinions onto a page, but to really be accurate predictors of a given artist's potential. And they just got it so wrong here, as Lana, I think, tastefully puts it. She could be a lot meaner than she is about this, and I think she's taking a tactful approach to calling them out, clapping back here. And Chloe Cooper Jones, you can see her contending as she's writing the story with the extent to which these critics, their critical voices, their pieces that she notes in the piece, might have colored her own perception of Lana Del Rey. And this is where the story begins, with the writer's own struggle to figure out why she is so skeptical of this persona that Lana Del Rey puts out there, which really is just her. It's not a mask. As her own producer, Jack Antonoff, says, the secret to Lana is that she's exactly who she is. She's really one of the greatest songwriters and vocalists who also likes to roll around in her truck and drink gas station coffee. That can disarm people, but it's no bit. This is Jack Antonoff, who now has produced 3 of her records. So he's had plenty of daily interaction with Lana, which has afforded him the luxury of really getting to know her in a way that few people do. And it's this person who knows her that familiarly who is saying, there's no bit here, guys. There's no realer Lana to pluck out of the facade. This is her. And you see Cooper Jones saying, of Lana's house, that it's unassuming. It's exceedingly modest for a woman of Del Rey's fame and resources. Now, there's a point where here's another writer profiling Lana Del Rey who's revealing more about her own preconceived notions than she is about Lana, right? She brought a preconceived notion about what a so-called multimillionaire, what kind of a house that person would live in. And it's not the kind of house that she found, which she describes as, at one point, she says of the house that it seems more set design than home, conceived to persuade me that I'm in the presence of the world's most down-to-earth millionaire. She points out that Del Rey offers her coffee made from the same kind of $30 coffee maker I had in my college dorm. I guess that's not the kind of coffee maker a multimillionaire is supposed to use. I don't know, not being a multimillionaire myself, what kind of coffee maker a multimillionaire is supposed to use, but apparently not one that costs $30 or can be found in a college dorm. Here again, it's Jones revealing more about herself than about Lana Del Rey. The struggle, and I don't want to demean Jones by any stretch, because this struggle that she faces in the story as the writer of this profile of Lana Del Rey is an honest and forthcoming one, and I really appreciate how candid she is about wrestling with whether or not these are her own perceptions or whether they've been planted in her mind by these critics that got it so wrong so long ago. She says she finds herself searching for artifice and affect, for a peek beyond her persona to locate the space where some realer Del Rey is hidden. That is the assumption that so many of these critics brought to their appraisals of Born to Die in 2012, right? No, surely this isn't the real her. This is a fake fraud. This is a front. This is a poser, right? She's pretending to be this vulnerable, femme fatale, whatever labels he wanted to slap onto this. But there's a charming moment in the piece when Jones refers to a friend of hers whom she only identifies as Kelly. Apparently, Kelly is a Lana Del Rey fan, and reportedly, by Jones's own story, says that Kelly reminds me, Lana Del Rey shops at Kohl's, gets awards show dresses off the rack at the mall, and makes friends with workers at Waffle House and starts serving people alongside them, which, by the way, people were assuming maybe she's recording a music video at Waffle House. No, she was just shooting the breeze with friends at a Waffle House. Family, I think, were with her. And just decides to do this and get up and start serving with a makeshift name tag that just in huge letters said Lana on it. And yeah, it went viral. I don't know, millions of people, tens of millions of people, I think, watched this video of Lana Del Rey serving coffee. There's one snippet where she's singing Amazing Grace with a regular who asked for an empty cup with his breakfast for his dip. It's just hilarious, and it's authentic. It's maybe, I don't know what it is about the way Lana sort of carries herself from day to day that people find in some cases offensive or disarming or bewildering or whatever it might be, but it's just her being her, as Jack Antonoff says. So I will certainly link to this story in the description. It's certainly worth reading for a Lana Del Rey fan. This Harper's Bazaar story, the written story in the magazine, also came with a wonderful little sort of bonus interview that I'll also link to, in which Lana is answering questions about herself and her work that is really a fun watch. So, as I always say, come to your own conclusions. Check out this one honest, very good writer's own struggle with her perceptions of Lana, having encountered her in person, having gone to this unadorned, unassuming house, as she puts it, and struggling with the effort that she has been compelled to make by critics themselves to match the Lana that she's seen with the Lana that she's been told to perceive by the critics that she claps back at in this piece. A fun, worthwhile read over this holiday weekend. Check it out. I'd love to hear your thoughts on it if you do in the comments.